So that's really weird.
Oh, you'll be wonderful at it. If I can get Adam Fouché on here, I think you'll be fine. Are you guys from Kentucky or where are you guys from?
Paris, Tennessee.
So how did you guys end up getting Wicked Warzone or Wicked Derbies?
Wicked Derbies.
Yeah,
Wicked
it's
Derbies.
Awesome.
We're up and we're online. Over here.
That's kind of a long story. Are we on now?
yeah.
Okay.
We are live.
Okay, I see.
Perfect. Everything's set up, and we are ready to go, my guys. How you doing tonight?
Good as
Pretty
can
good.
be.
You guys excited for the weekend?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So is the venue all ready to go, or how's that all looking?
I think they're starting on the track today, and we'll go up on Thursday or Friday, make sure the track looks good, and do the final prep on the track, and it should be good to go.
Fun. So is the event sold out, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Why do you think that show sells out so fast, so quick at the beginning of the year?
I think it's a combination of everybody's been cooped up and they're ready to get the Derby season kicked off, and it's just got a good reputation of being a good show. So
Go ahead.
I think quite a bit of it has to do with the amount of vendors there, and a lot of people want to save on shipping. You know, they've been cooped up all year and want to get out and buy parts.
that's a good point.
Just because the last big show was what, Blizzard Bash, and that was in what, November?
Yep.
It's one thing I've noticed over the years. The Derby world we're all active, but the second Derby stops, the internet just explodes.
That's true.
Very true.
So, how did you guys get into Derby?
You go ahead.
Well, my dad did it back in the late '90s and everything, and he always talked about how much fun it was and how much he enjoyed it. My then one of my good buddies told me I should do it, and all this and that. And I started collecting up parts. My cousin had a junkyard, and he gave me a car to run in remembrance of his father that had the junkyard, and that's kind of how it started. I started buying and collecting up parts, then just kept building off of that. But basically, it all stemmed from my dad doing it back in the old days.
Well, that's all. So, did your dad retire, or how does that? Was he still Derby, and how does that all work?
Well, he, I think 98 or 99 is when he last derbied, and then I got him to run in April of 22, and then he ran in the co-pilot class last year at the Redneck Rumble with Austin.
Yeah.
And that was the last time he ran.
Oh, so Austin, how did you get into Derby?
My family derbied probably 80s and 90s, and then they got out of it, but they were still kind of involved helping other people build cars. So when I got old enough, I just kind of started doing it too.
So when you guys got into the sport of Derby, and what was it like? What were the builds like? What were the turnouts like? What was everything like?
See, I guess when I started, it's probably 2010-ish. So it's a lot of wire build around us, a lot of real light build stuff, and a lot of old iron kind of stuff. Not really like it is today.
So when you started, I would have been 4 years old.
Yeah. I was 14.
That's my favorite part about asking that question. You know, like somebody said they were starting in the 90s. I was like, yeah, my dad was like 6 when you started. It was one of them, you know. So when you first started, what was your first car?
I think I had a box Lincoln for my first car.
Mine was a box Merc.
How did you guys do with them?
I don't think I did very good. To be honest.
Mine was rough. It was bad. It was junk in like 7 minutes.
Well, you'll have that sometimes. So, when did you guys start reaching out to go to like the bigger events and all them like the quote unquote national shows, you could say?
I don't know. We went. Where did we go?
Rumble was first, and then Mayhem.
I started running at Sturgis. It's been a while ago. I think I ran there 5 or 6 years before we ended up being the promoters for the place. And we've been to. I think me and you went to Mayhem. What year was that? 21.
Yep.
So, how did you guys make the switch from like running derbies to like promoting derbies? How did you get into that lane?
I think kind of what happened. I always ran Dixon's shows, and then I think him and my wife got to talking about something derby related. I think it got brought up as we were trying to get a show in Tennessee at our local place, and I think we hit up Brandon about bringing a Wicked show down there, and then I think he said something along the lines of his kids were taking up a lot of his time, and he didn't really have time to do it. And I think he just, as a joke, mentioned selling it, and then it kind of snowballed from there, and then here we are.
So, when it comes to the promoting side, do you think it's gotten easier or worse over the past like few years since you guys started?
It's been pretty easy, honestly, in my opinion.
It's not been terrible.
So what is your guys' favorite part about promoting derbies?
I guess for me, it's just making sure that the shows continue to go well and everything's just done the correct way.
I like seeing all the spectators happy at the end of the night.
Yep.
Putting on a good show for them. And I know I can speak for both of us. We both love hearing all the positive comments after all the shows and then all the messages and Facebook posts, and that always helps out quite a bit.
So, is there more like positive feedback usually, or does the negative feedback seem to be bigger? Because that's what some of the bigger guys say. Like TJ, for example, that's what he says. After every one of his shows, he looks on there and it's everything you did wrong and everything you did right.
We haven't had a lot of negative feedback yet. I'm sure it'll happen, but so far it's been mostly positive.
Well, so how many years have you guys been doing this for?
Well, we haven't. I think we purchased Wicked, I think last March, and for the first show, the team show in March, we kind of helped Brandon do it, and then our first one was in Tennessee in October, so we haven't been doing it long.
Pretty fresh still.
So, what's the story behind you guys purchasing Wicked?
Pretty much, I think Brandon was just ready to. He wanted to spend more time with his kids, and he had some other business ventures, I think, taking up a lot of his time, and which he's still involved. He helps out. He's still got a financial tie to it in a way, but he didn't have the time to commit to it. We were looking to bring some bigger level shows to Tennessee, so it just worked out.
And he had built up a really good brand. The Wicked brand has been built up very well, and several people always enjoyed the show, especially the shows in Sturgis, and when he used to put on the shows in Evansville.
I remember, I couldn't tell you what year it was, but it was one of the first years they started running Power Wheels. I was like Power Wheels 8. I don't remember how old I was. But we ran out there. It was freezing cold. We put the Power Wheels in the back of we had a Buick Rendezvous my mom was driving. We drove down the Sturgis with the Power Wheels just stuffed in the back of it. We ran the Power Wheel. I think I won it. I don't remember exactly how it went. But that was one of the first Power Wheel derbies ever at the national shows, I believe. I could be wrong about that, though. So since you guys have taken over Wicked, like have you guys changed anything or kept everything the same, or?
done a couple of rule changes, some small stuff. We added a new class for this year.
I say most of how the formats of the shows and everything is pretty much the same, but we've added our own little twist to a few things.
When it comes to rule changes, what rules changed the most? Because aren't the mini cars out there, I remember they're like full cradle, just ready to go. Or did that all change?
The mini cars, we actually hire that out to. We hire out the inspection of those to what's the guy's
Kyle Katusin.
Yeah, he handles our mini car stuff.
He thought it was time for a change and to bring a new rule set and a little bit lighter build and really clean everything up. And
so, what is the main big car classes like out there? Are they hard? Are like full cradle cars, like Blizzard Bash cars? Are they stocker cars? Like what is the main rule set out there?
this year we added the bigger paying class is what we call the Wicked Weld class. It's going to be the bigger playing class in the main class this year. It's so the good way to explain it is you take to simplify inspection, and where we take our bone stock cars after they're pre-run, they're easy to convert into this class if somebody wants to bring a bone stock car class with a little bit more plate. The biggest changes are from bone stock to the weld class is tilting, creasing, hump plates, and you can change 2 more body bolts. But there's several rules and measurements the same to keep it straight across the board for all classes. So we're not in there measuring different size plates, A-arm straps, different all thread sizes, gas tank protector length, door bar length, just to speed up inspection and make it more efficient and consistent. That way there's not so much. That way, if 2 cars come through the same line for different classes, we're not measuring a ton of different things and get confused and miss something.
So basically, the rule sets are the same. Just one class is added, and one class is basically lighter in those areas.
It's pretty much all the same rules. We added a few things to our bone stock class, that's our most popular class. Just some stuff the driver's been asking for a while, and then we were running a pro stock rule set for our harder class, but the rules didn't. There was guys that would show up with a bone stock car with a little extra done to it wanting to run that class, but the rules just didn't jive. So we just we started over on that rule set, took our bone stock rules and then kind of added to it. Make everything a little bit more cohesive.
So out of all your guys' classes, which one is your guys' favorite?
I think mine's bone stock. That's what I always ran before we started doing this.
I like the co-pilot class personally.
Why is that?
I ran it a few years back, and it was just one of the. It wasn't stressful. It was the most relaxed and most fun I'd ever have in a car. I knew we were not going to go get out there and do good. We were just there for a good time, basically, and it was just relaxed and always gets pretty wild in that class.
Huh. I've never heard that. I've never heard the words relaxed for that one. I can't say I've ever heard the co-pilot, because in my eyes, that class is by far the craziest class you can get in.
It usually is the wildest.
And that's almost every show you go to, no matter where you're at in the country. That class, for some reason, everybody's just like, let's get it done and go as fast as we can. Which, me personally, I don't even like to ride on the back of a four-wheeler with somebody else driving, let alone get in a derby car and have to share the controls. No, thank you.
The year I did it, we didn't drive the car together till we pulled on the track. So it was an experience.
So, with that being said, what are some of your guys' favorite derby and memories?
I don't know. Say that again.
Like, out of all your guys' years of derbying, like through all the years, like what are some of your favorite memories derbying? You know, like the co-pilot class, relaxed. I don't know how that's relaxed, but apparently it is, you know.
I don't know. Mine would probably not be the co-pilot class. I've done it a few times, and I'm not a fan. I think my favorite memories. I like to just go places by myself, and I'll show up, and that's my favorite time. That's the ones I remember the most.
The one where you just go there, all the politics are against you, and you're just like, let's see what we can do, boys. Whip them out. Let's get her done.
I always end up doing better in those situations. I don't know how it works out that way, but it does. That's probably my favorite.
I hate politics. That's out of when it comes to derbying, I hate politics because it takes all the fun out of it. You know, you go to a team like prime example, the Bash team show this year. I'm looking forward to it, but it's just going to be a political war. I know it looking into it, but going somewhere else, I don't know. It's fun, but it's also a little more frightening when you go somewhere and it's 10-on-1. You know.
I've been there a few times.
So, how bad are the politics down there at Wicked Warzone?
I can't. That's more of a you question. I'm usually in there by myself.
About as equal to any other big show you could go to.
Yeah, it's probably about the same, realistically.
I can see it. So, do you think Wicked Warzone is growing, or do you think it's like staying the same? Or do you think the show's getting bigger? Where do you see the direction of this show going over the next couple of years?
Definitely growing. Tickets keep selling out faster every year after year. And this year, there's been more vendors than any other year decide to come.
I think we had 32 vendors sign up.
And then at the beginning, it's kind of dwindled down since it's less than a week away from showtime. But the amount of people on the waiting list for each class is crazy.
I know this just trying to get a ticket after when I wasn't there to get one when you guys were selling them. It's almost next to impossible. You know?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Which I think that's for any of the big shows. So when it comes to big and national shows, do you guys consider this like a national event, or do you where do you guys put this on the scale of events?
I would consider it the start to all the national events of the year. It's the first big derby that everybody comes to. Part of the Unified Points series, which
it does kind of kick off the year. You get drivers from all over the place come to Sturgis to run that show.
You know, the one thing that has always amazed me is that like all these winter shows are all the biggest shows if you think about it. Like Blizzard Bash, Gold Rush, these are all the biggest shows and they're all the coldest. You know, like the Bash, we're probably going to be sweating our asses off all weekend long. But if you go to Kansas, you're probably going to be freezing to death all weekend long.
Yeah, it's miserable out there working on the car.
How was that experience?
It was a rough one. Luck was definitely not on any of our sides, and I think we done. Nobody thought we were going to pull off what we did at the end of that. And you can thank Levi for that one.
I had his hat in here. I have for some reason I always kept my Levi DM hat right here just in case, and this for the one time. Oh wait, no, hold on. Dude, I'm about to rep the man. Hold on here. Blizzard Bash champion, you guys. We're just out here getting ready to go. So, how did your guys' Blizzard Bash team come together?
Well, at first it started out just me and Dylan were talking like, let's go run a team show. Let's go run a team show. And then we decided we got Taylor Feldkamp. He wanted to sponsor us because he had sponsored one of Dylan's previous teams. And then I got Corey on board. Corey had always talked about wanting to go run Blizzard Bash. He's got good equipment, very hard driver. I think everybody knows that. And then Dylan and Levi were buddies, and Dylan got Levi on, and it just kind of all came together like that, which we all live. Me and Corey live about a little over an hour apart, but all the rest of us are pretty far apart.
I was thinking that because I didn't know Levi. He's in what, Indiana, I believe?
Northern Indiana.
I figured you guys are super far apart. So I was just wondering how that all came together. So, do you guys plan on going back out there?
I don't think so.
Well, why is that? It's like the biggest show in the world.
I think one time was enough. It was a heck of an experience, but I think once was enough. It was fun for sure. It was a great time, great experience. I think everybody should at least do it once.
So, what's out of your entire Blizzard Bash experience? What was the coolest part of it all?
Probably all of our names getting called out going through a tunnel for Heat 1.
So, where does driving through that tunnel rank on the list of Derby achievements?
Probably the top one so far, I would say. It was just it was surreal. Years ago I dreamed, pulling through that tunnel and all that, and then finally made it happen. It just felt like a huge accomplishment. It was definitely one for the books.
So what happened in the heat? I forget exactly how it went, but all I remember is it came down to Levi. What happened to the rest of you guys that night?
Corey burned up a trans first. He had made like one big hit, lost reverse, made another hit, and then he lost all gears, a brand new transmission. Then Dylan, his horn shoved back. He lost steering and had a guy up on the wall, and I was trying to get him off. And then he waved me off, told me to leave him because he had another guy that still had steering up on the wall. So I just said leave him pinned so we didn't get him down. And then I took a bad shot and shoved my gearbox into my pulley protector and then locked the pitman arm up. So I lost steering and timed out, and then Levi's back bumper got caught on the ground.
So why did you guys decide to run? That was the stock. Was it their super stock, or what did they call it out there?
Stuck.
Why did you guys decide to run the street stock class compared to the limited weld and the national side?
I don't think all of us had time this year to build that much of cars with all else we had going on.
I get that. So when it comes to you guys running, what's your guys' next big shows you guys want to run? Or what's on the agenda to come,
Spring X for me.
Which class? Team show or
The 4-on-4 teams.
fun? And then what's your next show?
Probably run some local shows, and then the next big one will probably be Mayhem next year. I have a kid in March, so I'll be tied up with that for a little while.
Fun. So I'll go ahead and we're about the 23-minute mark. You guys, I'll let you give out some information about the show real quick, and then we'll get back to the conversation.
What's that?
I'll let you talk about the show. The details to the event and stuff like that. We got a few more viewers tuning in right now.
Realistically, it's just, for those that have been going several years, it's going to be the same setup, which we're going to open it up. Since they're not having the Friday night event this year, we're going to come in, set up the inspection lines, and anybody that wants to come in early, we're going to do inspection Friday night if they would rather come through. If not, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Inspection. Have to be stick by 3. Show starts at 5. Pretty similar. Then everybody that wants to come in, all the vendors will be set up that want to come around and get parts, and then all that will be closed down when the show starts. And then pretty much exactly the same how it's been ran in years past. I don't think we decided on a running order yet, but that'll be posted later in the week.
So why did you guys decide to switch it from a 2-day show to a 1-day show?
We really didn't do that. That was a thing with the previous fair board, and that was a different promoter coming in, putting on the bump and run and the enduro stuff on a Friday night. That was not Wicked doing that.
Huh. I never knew any of that. So the bump and run, I don't even know what to call that. So that stuff not going to be there this year.
Correct.
Interesting. Well, that's pretty cool, I suppose. So let's see here. Got any comments to read here? Just everybody's saying you guys are famous now. So, how many years has Wicked Warzone been a thing? Like, how many years has the show been getting put on? Or if it's, was it Rec? Is Redneck Rumble, was that the show prior to that, the name wise, or is it a different show?
That was the same show. That was the name. The fair board that was in control of I guess the site that the show's
Venue.
the venue that the show is at. They trademarked the name, and the venue changed hands, so the name went with the fair board. So it's the same show. We just renamed it.
So the fair board changed, or what happened there exactly?
It's a long story, but to sum it up, the Union County Fair Board was kind of I guess the stewards of the venue, you'd say. And now that it changed hands, the judge of the county is now kind of overseeing the event venue. So the fair board's not involved anymore.
So it's the county. That's interesting. Interesting. So since you guys started putting on this show, what is some of the more challenging parts when it comes to putting on an event like that? Like the drivers, when it comes, what's one of the hardest parts when it comes to putting on that big of a national event?
I don't know, probably just the logistics of the whole thing. There's a lot that goes into it that people don't think about. You gotta arrange for equipment to be there to build the track, move the cars, and arrange for the manpower.
Inspecting that many cars within an 8-hour window, would be another one.
So when it comes to inspection, how do you guys inspect? Are you guys lenient? Do you try to work with them, or is it like it's our way or the highway? Get the torches out.
We try to be pretty strict on the rules, but at the same time, we don't nitpick small things. I mean, we'll work with a driver. We're not going to be difficult for no reason.
If it's an extra inch of door strapping, we're not going to make somebody cut it if that's the only thing they have to cut.
What are your thoughts on when promoters do that? Isn't that one of the most annoying things when they're telling you to cut something that does nothing? I remember I had to cut a windshield drop visor out of a convertible this year. Did nothing, but they didn't like how it looked, I suppose.
Yeah, we try not to do that. It's just, there's no reason for nitpicking things like that. If it strengthens the car and it's not in the rules, you should cut it. But small stuff like that, there's no reason to throw a temper tantrum over it.
And we both pride ourselves in being respectful through inspection, introducing ourselves, being friendly, not giving anybody a hard time, and hopefully nobody gives us a hard time. Because the biggest thing, personally, I don't like going through an inspection line and just being talked to disrespectfully or rudely to when I ask a simple question. I like, if there's something I'm curious about, I just ask them to explain it, not in a rude manner at all, but just have an explanation of why I have to cut something that wasn't in the rules. And I think that helps us in the inspection line, in our inspection line, the promoting side of it, helps us do better with the drivers and get along better with the drivers and understand where they're coming from as well.
I don't really think anybody benefits from the my way or the highway type of a inspection line.
The only people that benefit, here's the reason why I believe that promoters do that stuff is because it doesn't help the guys that are going to try to think creatively and go figure out all the gray areas and everything. Those guys, they're going to overdo it no matter what. And then the guys that aren't, that's the only people that entire way of thinking helps, you know. If a guy reads the black and white, says, oh, okay, it only helps that guy. If the guy tries to find all the gray areas, that only punishes that guy to keep it all fair in a sense.
I mean, that's part of the sport, in my opinion. If you find a loophole in the rules or a gray area, and you can reason your way into keeping whatever it is that you found, then I mean, more power to you. That's part of the sport, in my opinion.
So when you guys are building, are you guys more creative builders, or you guys just like, let's get it done and go dirty?
I think you're the more creative of us.
Yeah, I like going somewhere and having to cut.
I very, very rarely have to cut anything.
What's your guys' longest cut list?
2 pages at Blizzard Bash.
I don't.
It was street stock.
Every one of us had a front and back.
Well, you know, I can't even say anything because I'm at least page and a half. No matter if I build a fresh car, I figure we're going to overdo it no matter what, you know.
And it took every one of us. It took at least three trips through the line.
So, how aggravating is that when you're in Kansas and it's the third trip? Because that you only get what 3 trips out there before you don't get to run, or did they change it? I thought it was like that in the past.
No, they didn't. They didn't give us a hard time about that at all. I had to come back through, and one other was for bumper height. Was our biggest thing because they got confusing because I printed off the rules as soon as we signed up, and they redone the rules, and I was in an old iron, and my back bumper was like 2.5 inches higher than my rails. In the old set of rules, it said 14 inches to the bottom of the bumper, and then the new set of rules, it says 14 inches to the lowest point of the rear frame, whether it be the bumper or the rear frame.
So when you went out to Blizzard Bash, why did you decide to take an old iron?
Well, at first we all started building wagons, and then we didn't think the rules were in favor for wagons, and I thought a vert frame was the way to go. But if I had to do it all over again, I think a Ford would 100% be the way for that class.
What makes you say that?
Just the way the car bent, it being I personally think I have a little bit more knowledge on a Ford than an old iron, and that was not the show to try it at, and just bad luck. But I think a lot of it had to do with having to cut my bumper brackets down, then heating, putting the heat from welding on the frame, and then having to cut it back off. Tempered the frame a little bit, and I think that had a lot to do with it, as well as the way I set a few things up with A-arm straps, bumper straps, and all that. I think that had a lot that went into it.
Interesting. So you built a lot more Fords than you did old iron?
Yes, very much so.
What's your favorite part about running Fords?
You can drive them head on.
Well, you can do that with anything. It just might not work out well.
Right. They hold up a little bit better in my experience head on than I have had luck out of an old iron.
So are you like an 9802 guy or an 03 guy?
03.
So what build rules do you usually build 03s for? Like the aluminum cradle has to stay in, or are you allowed to build cradles in? Or
Aluminum cradle has to stay in.
I ran an 03 a couple years ago. Hard car. The steering sucked, which I don't know. I mean, I'd much rather have steering than a hard car because in my eyes, you can't really do anything with a hard car. Can't hit, you know.
Yep, absolutely got to have 4 wheels to make it down to the end.
So what's your favorite part about building them 03s?
It's a simple build, really, around us.
Uh,
You could throw one together pretty quick and have a really hard car.
I like one big thing is I think as many as I've messed with, the '03 steering comes easier to me than '02 and down. I can change it out faster. I can put it all back on faster. I've developed a system with building cradles and stuff like that. It comes easier to me. I enjoy it more. And it's a lot cleaner. The newer stuff is definitely a lot cleaner.
Yeah, you don't have to fight all the rust. They're usually, especially around us, they're mostly rust free down here.
And I don't have to fight with pitman and idler arms, drag links, all that stuff. I just think it's so much more simple.
You have problems breaking racks?
Broke one.
I think I've broke 2 out of all the ones. I mean, I've probably run 20 shows in '03 and only broke 2 racks. So
Well, you're ahead of the curve for 90% of Derby people right now. So, what makes you guys like the stocker build more than the harder builds?
Just no local show wise. There's no hard shows around us.
yeah, that's the majority of it.
That's pretty much. I would rather build harder cars, just because you're either fixing something driveline related or suspension related instead of fixing the whole car or building a whole new car.
I could not tell you. Right now I have 3 hard cars, nowhere to run them. I have a King car, nowhere to run it. I have a car I built for Dead Man. The way their rules are set up, nowhere to run it. So when it comes to cars that you have nowhere to run, and because the rules are 10 times different everywhere, what are your guys' thoughts on like a unified rule set for everybody? Basically, do you think that'll ever happen, or what are you guys' opinions on that?
I think it would be great if it did happen. Around us, that's one of the perks to this show is the bone stock rules that we use. They're pretty universal around us, and they're spreading out more and more now, more in shows. If you build a car around us, within 2 or 3 hours, you can get it in somewhere, that's one of the perks to that rule set.
Which I think everywhere in the Derby world is going lighter instead of heavier.
Yeah,
Seems like with time, several years ago it was all kicker cars and 5-foot cars. It's gotten way lighter since then.
Well, even 2 or 3 years ago, we had a full protector class. Well, we didn't. Brendan did, and it was pretty popular. But recent years, that class wouldn't fill. The bone stock class always has a demand. We could probably have 2 classes at this show and fill them both.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just the natural cycle of derbying? Because the way it looks like right now, between what Smashed and them are doing for the bash, it's slowly starting to get back to those harder cars. What are your thoughts on that?
I think part of it has to do with the cycle, and then part of it has to do with how the economy is, how much materials are, and not everybody wants to go spend endless amount of money on cage material, all thread. Even nuts and bolts have went up like crazy since COVID. I think that has a lot to do with it.
I can see that. I mean, the thing I see, here's the way I see it. If you build a hard car, you could probably run twice as much than if you build a stock car. But the price of everything, it's no matter what you do, it's expensive. If you build one stock Vic, unless you want to derby more than that 1 car a year, it honestly, I believe, would be cheaper to build a harder car. It just doesn't seem like it. Because if you got to build, the price of cars right now is stupid. Like if you won't even touch an old iron, even a Crown Vic right now, you're looking at least $1,000 for a clean one.
They're not quite that around us yet.
Up north for sure, it's getting that high, but around us, I mean, you can still pick them up pretty cheap.
So that might be part of the reason.
I think
we don't have the temperatures, and northern states put out way more salt, therefore everything's more rusty.
I'm surprised to see. I'm going to be shocked to see what Crown Vics are in the next 5-10 years. Because right now, Crown Vics are rusty now. Imagine how bad it's going to be in the next 5 years.
I say within 10 years, they're the same price as old iron is right now. And then no telling what roundbacks will be worth.
If by then, I think it'll be next to impossible for just a random guy to have a roundback. It's just going to be all people with the collections right now. I think that's the only people that are going to be Derby and roundbacks. I think the Impalas and the sedans and all that, I think those will still be popping up here and there, but they're going to be expensive. Don't get me wrong. But I think Fords in the next 5 years, it's going to get expensiver because they're just going to get rustier and rustier. You know, like the metal on a Ford is terrible. Hard metal is just terrible to weld with. Like I had to put rockers on a Ford not too long ago. The worst experience of my life.
Oh, they're almost well.
Oh, it's terrible. Like, well, the only thing I can compare it to is welding. You know, on the bottom of the wheel well, when you go to grind that part down, but there's always moisture trapped in there. So if you start welding it, it just starts popping and cracking. And then you're catching on fire because it's just there's insulation in there. That's what welding the entire car is like, which just sucks, you know. But it is what it is.
Yeah, welding doors is for sure the worst part of building, in my opinion.
You know, buddy of mine, Tony Penwell. So I get into this argument with that guy almost at least once a day because he loves welding. The guy owns a welding fab shop. We get into arguments about welding sheet metal all the time. Like he'll weld doors and enjoy it. I make fun of him all the time, but then he's like, you don't understand. The sheet metal is 90% of this car. The frame is what, 10% of the entire car?
Something like that.
So it makes sense. It just sucks to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's more of a chore to me than anything. It's not an enjoyable part of the build. It's something you got to do.
Which 90% of Derby isn't that enjoyable. Like, and it's fun for about the first 50% of the build is amazing. You're having fun. You're thinking of new ideas. But then after that's all done, you're like, well, here we are.
Because you always wait to do the stuff you don't want to do last. Or at least
exactly. Which do you think the process of building a car has changed over the years?
Oh yeah, it's definitely changed.
Absolutely.
You got any like examples?
I know when I first started, at least around here, it was all mostly wire class type stuff. There was either wire class or it was old school, weld all of the frame seams, weld all the body seams. There's either a really drawn out process with a ton of time, or it was just kind of take the windows out, wire the door shut, and go type deal. Now, I mean, even a bone stock car is a considerable amount of work.
So I remember, when I was a kid, my favorite part of Derbying was creasing the car. I remember my dad, he said you crease the car, and you weld the doors last. That was always the rule until you started rolling quarters and you're doing all that. And then now that's like the first thing you do, you know? So you have the doors on and you have them creased and welded. That's what you do first. You know, I don't know if that's like what everybody did back then, but that's just what we did. And it's just monumentally different, you know?
There's definitely a lot different. I mean, back when I first started if you had a purpose-built Derby motor, that was a big deal. No one had that. It was a junkyard 350 out of something. I mean, that's a difference now.
Go ahead.
The drive lines are way different. Back then it was the stock rear end in the car. A few guys might have put gears in them or something. I mean,
do you think all the aftermarket support from the Derby parts market, do you think that's helped the sport or hurt it?
I think it's helped it a lot because, I mean, nowadays everything's kind of modular. You build a shell of the car and then your drive line comes in and out. I mean, everything's bolted in and out now. You don't have to mess with fixing the brakes on a stock car like you used to. Everybody's got pinion brakes.
Which
makes a big difference.
So where do you see the sport of demolition derby going in the next 5 years?
I really don't know. I don't really see a lot changing in the next 5 years myself.
Do you
I
think
see.
it'll ever go ahead?
I see I guess the technology of all the equipment we use in our cars. I see it kind of flatlining because I mean there will be a few guys here and there that keep building and keep updating parts and doing that kind of stuff, but for the most part, I kind of see it flatlining and staying somewhat close to what it is right now. The general build and the parts, the drive line, I see most of that just staying the same for the next few years to come.
Do you think the sport will eventually evolve into something like dirt track or maybe even NASCAR in a hypothetical world?
I could see it getting more along the lines of dirt track. It's kind of trending that way, sort of, if you think about it. The way the classes are and certain rule sets.
I see the longer derbying happens, the more likely it is for people to run less due to the fact of the availability of cars or adapt it into something that allows you to run a car more times. Just because of the availability and the scarcity of cars.
So then the cycle will go back to the hard cars very shortly then.
I think so, honestly.
I think over the next 4 or 5 years, it makes sense. Cars get harder to find. You got to make the one you got last longer. Kind of makes sense to do it that way.
Which that whole theory is the reason I started sandbagging when I was young. Because if I only got one car a year for the first like 2 or 3 years of Derby, so I was like, and the first year it was the second year. I ran one of our hometown shows and I had a W body and I drove like an idiot. You know, it was fun, but then like couldn't Derby for the rest of the year. So I was like, this is stupid. So that's when we started sandbagging. We started derbying more. Not a lot of people like this as much, but I mean, it is what it is, you know.
Part of it.
Go ahead.
You're either going to build 10 cars a year or you're going to drive the ones that you have smarter. Really, your only options.
Why do you think derbying has that toxic, like, just, how do I say this? Has that toxic community where it's just everything is bad unless it's you, you know? Do you get what I'm saying? Or
yeah, kind of. I don't know.
It's just like everything is a problem and everybody else is a problem except for me, which I guess that's kind of the way the world is, though.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the way the world is. And you put a bunch of guys with a lot of testosterone in a kind of more or less a combat sport, and it's kind of to be expected.
Yeah. I mean, it's always weird. I've never understood how basically everybody says we're like women until you step back and you're like, well, yeah, I could see that. You know, everything's just, he said this, he said that. You know, it always amazes me when somebody got super mad when somebody said they were going to jump you. I've never understood that. You know,
I usually don't get mad about much of anything in the Derby, really. You're out there to crash cars, go crash cars. But there's a lot of people that get upset about a lot of things too.
Which I don't know if it's the adrenaline, but like I when it comes to motorsports, I think like at fair derbies, those guys, everybody fights, you know. Everybody wants to fight, you know. Which, I mean, I don't know if it's the adrenaline or it's the atmosphere of it, but it just breeds violence, you know. Everybody's mad, which nowadays people don't really fight. They just cry and go on Facebook, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Let's see here. So what's your favorite part about the weekend coming up?
I don't know. I like the tech process. That's kind of my thing. I like to see all the builds, talk to all the drivers as they come through. That's kind of my favorite part.
When you're teching, how often do you learn something or think of something a new way when you're inspecting all those cars?
Every once in a while. I mean, I think about that stuff constantly, so I don't see a lot of stuff that I never thought of before, but there is guys that have come through there with some out of the box thinking.
I think The one thing that I love about Derbying right now compared to all the other sports is that Derbying is like the last motorsport where you can truly think out of the box. And you're still going to probably be punished, but just not on the level as it is in other sports.
Right.
Which, I don't know. How often do you guys deal with like so-called creative building down there at Wicked?
I'd say probably like 20% of the time. A lot of the guys around here, we've had the same rule set for so long, they kind of got the cars figured out. They don't experiment a lot. There's only so much you can do in certain classes. But every once in a while, you'll get some guys come through there with some cool stuff.
I get that. So, when it comes to cars, what's one of those cars you guys you haven't built but you really want to build?
I'm pretty partial to 03s myself, but if I could find a clean old iron Cadillac, I'd like to try one of those. How about you?
74 Rivy.
74 Rivy. What makes you say that?
I don't know. That question. I've always wanted to run a Rivy just because I see how hard they are, but I see a lot of issues with the back end. And I want to try to get creative enough where it doesn't have any back end problems. And I think they have the best front stub out of all the old irons in them.
Do you think when it comes to old iron, when nose to nose, almost any GM compared to any Ford, what do you think's winning?
Depends on the rule set.
Yeah, I think it depends on the rule set.
I think go ahead.
I'd take an 03 all day, just because I know those cars. But I'm sure there's scenarios where they wouldn't come out on top of that head-on stuff.
I think bumper choice goes a lot into that too.
Speaking of bumpers, about a week ago, that was a pretty big topic on the internet. You know, everybody wanted to kill each other over the topic of bumpers. What are your guys' thoughts on bumpers when it comes to different classes?
We're not really that picky over them. I mean, honestly, as long as it fits within our parameters and there's no astronomical point to them where we think it becomes a safety hazard, we're pretty much fine with it. Which we allow all fabricated bumpers for all of our classes.
So basically in any bumper pool.
Pretty much. As long as it's not exceeding like what a factory pointy would. At that point, it become a safety hazard.
So, let's see here. So, down there at Wicked, do you guys have any problems with sandbagging or anything like that? Somebody asked that in the comments not too long ago.
Usually this show, the one and done's not that much. The guys get in there and they get it done pretty quick, put on a good show. The one we did in Tennessee, it was a bigger paying show, which you expect a little slower pace. People want that check, but for the most part, not really.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. There was definitely some, and there's always, even at this show, the January show, there's still going to be some, but we're going to do what we can to police it and make the best show possible. But we don't want to go. The way I look at it, if we have to make an example out of somebody, we will. But we'd rather, see who is going to not change the outcome of the event. If we warn you, then take it as a legitimate warning.
Yeah, you guys ever been thrown out for bagging?
I haven't. I don't think you have either.
No.
I usually don't have a choice because I'm by myself.
I always bounce the corners of the track.
Yeah, I have the tendency to sometimes, I got thrown out once or twice. It wasn't my greatest moment, but I mean, it is what it is. Let's see. So, when you guys are promoting shows, how do how important is it to have that mutual respect between you and your drivers?
I think it's critical. I mean, if they don't respect you, if you don't have a mutual respect there, they're not going to listen to you, and it's going to just create tension, and it doesn't help anything.
And then you're going to get bashed on Facebook. Then everybody's going to see it. And then it's like a snowball effect. It only gets worse. We want it where everybody leaves our show happy and talks about how great of an experience and how fairly they've been treated.
So do you guys think Facebook has helped the Derby world or hurt it?
I think you see a guy could do, I think this is kind of a general rule of thumb. It's not always the case. I think a guy could do 10 great things, add one bad thing, and the one bad thing outrules the 10 great things he does.
I think Facebook just amplifies what's already there. It just gives people a platform. If you have someone that's going to say a bunch of stuff, a bunch of bad things about everybody else, they're going to do it regardless. Facebook's just where they're going to do it.
I can see that. So, let's see here. So, maybe that's about everything we can talk about. You guys got anything you want to say before we get off here? Promote the show or anything like that?
Can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Can't think of either.
Good, my man. So, where can people go into the show find more information about the show at?
Mostly everything will be posted on Facebook. That's where we do all of our updates and stuff. And then the website's where all the rules are, which I think they're tagged on. We share them on Facebook too.
Yeah, we've got a link to the website. And then either call one of us, or the best way to get a hold of us is message the page so we have record of everything.
Yeah.
And if we have so many, if we get so many questions about one specific thing, then we try to post stuff to avoid reoccurring questions.
Fun. Sounds good, my man. We shall see you guys this weekend. Wicked Warzone this Saturday. What time does it start? 5 p.m.?
5.
If you're not going, go buy the pay-per-view at Derby Nation. You can listen to me and my boy Steve Buckman talk about Derby and commentate the Derby, I suppose. Should be fun. Having Steve Buckman on this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that is all. Thank you guys for coming on. Can't wait to see you this weekend.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you guys for coming on. We shall see you guys on Thursday. See you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you guys for coming on.